implicatory statements, or I think that's the official term. So every statement we make, or most every statement, has an implied meaning. And if we can spot that in ourselves and others, we can not get triggered. Because if we're taking the bait based on the implied innuendo underneath the words, underneath the attack, if we can spot that consciously, then we can just let it go or recognize it's an attack, and then we don't have to get all defensive.
Really shifted my thinking. It was called assumptions and presuppositions. And I got very, very good at hearing people's assumptions and presuppositions about when they were open their mouths. So I could hear it. So I would hear it. And that's all I need to hear. I didn't need to hear their story.
But if you get good at catching people's assumptions, then you don't need to hear the story. So if you have a narcissist that's love bombing you, or that's gaslighting you, if you can catch the assumption at the beginning, then you can disregard the rest. Then you don't need to have all the boundaries and all the other gimmicks. Because what matters is the underlying assumptions and implicit meaning underneath the words. That's usually at the beginning, or close to the beginning of intellectual debate or an attack.
So I'd let them, run out of gas when they tell a story, and I go back and ask a question that addressed their assumption. They go, "How'd you know to ask that?" Yeah. And I would be like, "Oh shit!" Now they think I'm some mystical seer, and that felt really, really fucking uncomfortable. Like, "How'd you do that?" I'm like, "Dude, well," and I would go, "Look,
it looked like magic. If someone was good at it,
all you had to do is connect with and hear their assumptions about what they were saying, and just get them to think about it differently, which they had never done." Yeah. So for you to go in with a direct question on their assumptions about what they were doing, they felt, "Oh," but that's what I recognized was being done to me after a while. And
Nancy and Lauren were good at that.
This is what I recognize. Like, this isn't rocket science. This is just figure out the assumptions and presupposition that are running this person's life. Right? Yeah. Like, I need this thing. And be like, "Well, what if you didn't need that?" They go, "How'd you know to ask that?" Well, you told me when you sat down in the first 30 seconds, and then you talked. Everything was based on that assumption. That's all I had to catch. I didn't need to hear their story. Everything was based on that assumption. That's all I had to catch. I didn't need to hear their story. I didn't need to hear their story.
Because we had the earlier pointer of this challenge.
There is no sincere communication with the insincere. There is no sincere communication with the insincere.
So that was a start to recognize insincere conversation, but now I want to escalate to the next level. Not only do you recognize insincere communication, now I want you to figure out the implied meaning, the assumptions underneath their words, which is usually at the beginning of people's statements. Or if you keep asking questions, you can find the assumption.
That's what I do when you sick me on people, right? I'm just going underneath. Usually I don't really care enough.
Now, why don't you care enough? That's where all the fun is, people's assumptions and core beliefs.
I know it's good. Like, I'll do it on Twitters and stuff, like for fun occasionally. But like when you're interacting with people, like, do I care enough about you to care about your assumption? This is only like for coaching, right?
No. If you understand a person's assumption, you can speak their language. You can change your framing to match theirs.
If I care.
If you care about communicating better, yeah. It's lovely you have the option, or you're living in a way of life where you're like, "Oh, I can live in tons of people. I don't have to care about their inner world or their orbit because I feel safe enough." I guess. Earlier we pointed out, or we dug a little, that she had discomfort about asking questions because she thought people would run away or shrivel, fall apart. And that was part of the implied assumption. But underneath that was the abandonment terror. And then we just challenged the abandonment terror. Like, well, has it happened? Where's your evidence that if you question somebody, they're going to shrivel and fall apart and run away? And she couldn't do it. I never thought of that. And then you saw that realization happen by just challenging her assumption.
Okay.